Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today, The First Step to Advocating for Early Childhood Education. A very important webinar. We have an absolutely amazing guest for you today. I've had a sneak peek at the slides, and it is going to be an absolutely amazing webinar. Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, go ahead and let us know where you are joining us from today. Welcome, Rhonda, Olivia, Tanisha. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Thursday, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It has been quite a hard, challenging week for many. We send a lot of love to everyone here, who I see a lot of people joining us from Texas today. Thank you for making the time to be with us. Welcome, everybody. As always, we are just taking a really quick minute here to let everybody trickle in. And we're going to get started right at 2 o'clock on the dot. We have a great presentation for you today, and I do want to make sure we maximize our entire hour. So go ahead and take this next minute to grab some coffee, some tea, a cup of water, close those office doors wherever you may be, and settle in for a very, very insightful next hour of learning about the first step to advocating for early childhood education. Welcome, Mariah. Welcome, Margaret. Thank you for being here. I know it's so hard to find the time in your busy, busy days to be here, to learn, to focus on your professional development. So thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to go ahead and pause our music, another great transition there, and we're going to go ahead and get started so we can maximize our entire hour together. Again, welcome everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you for being here with us today to learn about the first step to advocating for early childhood education. Quick reminder, something very new and exciting we are doing with all of our webinars now. For every single person who is joining us live, so all of you here with us right now, your names are automatically entered for a chance to win a $50 gift card, whether that's for supplies, for your center, for your classroom, whatever it may be. There will be one lucky winner from today's webinar. We will announce the winner show notes email that's going out next week. So do keep an eye on that show notes email, because we will announce the winner there. And if you are the winner, we will also contact you directly. So you don't have to worry about reaching out to us. And as always, a quick disclaimer before we get started. Whether you've been to every webinar or whether this is your very first webinar with us, we do just like to remind everybody that the content we are sharing today is not personalized legal or financial advice. So the goal today is for everyone to learn some very great tips, tricks, and techniques for you to bring into your lives as early childhood professionals. But if you are looking at making any big changes at your center, we do just want to make sure you're consulting the right people, such as a legal or a financial advisor. And we are now going to give a listen to our land acknowledgement.
Hi Mama acknowledges that our main headquarters is situated in Toronto, Ontario, on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto itself is a word that originates from the Mohawk word Takaranto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing. As participants and guests in today's webinar, we are coming together from many different places around the world. We encourage you to learn about and acknowledge the land from which you participate.
And we are now going to give a listen to our diversity and inclusion statement.
Hi Mama is committed to fostering an inclusive and welcoming environment for our employees, customers, and community. Hi Mama welcomes and celebrates individuals of all backgrounds, orientations, and identities. Our Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee aims to ensure we provide a safe environment for everyone to thrive while bringing their authentic selves to work. Our mission is to promote an inclusive workspace for all employees through education, discussion, and celebration of our differences. Embracing these differences while coming together with a common purpose is what makes our team extra special.
Okay, and as always, a few housekeeping pieces before we get started. This session is being recorded, so if anything comes up and you do have to hop off before the end of the webinar, do not worry. We will be sending out the recording to you all with the slides by early next week. We are also recording with the closed captions enabled, so that will be in the recording, but if you do require the closed captions today for this live webinar, please be sure to hit that CC tab on your Zoom so you can utilize those today. And as always, the certificate for everyone joining us live here today, you will absolutely receive a certificate of participation for taking the time to be here with us today. We will be getting those certificates out to you by early next week. So as always, if you don't see it today, do not worry. Don't worry if you don't see it tomorrow either. We will absolutely get it out to you by early next week. And lastly, if you're having any issues at all with your Zoom, which we certainly hope you don't during this next hour, but if you do, we just want to make sure you're contacting the right people who can help you out. So that would be the support team over at Zoom, and you can contact them at support.zoom.us. Okay, and lastly, hi Mama. If you have never heard of us before, welcome. If this is your very first webinar with us, let us know in the chat. I am so glad you've made your way to us. But what is Hi Mama? On top of our fabulous professional development community with our weekly podcasts and webinars and activities that we put out, we are also the #1 rated childcare management app. So our goal here at Hi Mama is to help center operators, families, and educators take all that administration and make it as seamless as possible at your center so you can focus on what matters most, which is those children. So in Hi Mama, you can do your parent communication, attendance, all your documentation, photo sharing, messaging, your billing and payments. It's all in Hi Mama for you. Lena has posted a link in the chat if you would like to learn more about how Hi Mama can help you at your center. And please know that if you do join the Hi Mama family, I can absolutely promise you, you will receive world-class support. I used to be on our customer success team as well, and I can absolutely say from firsthand experience, it is the most amazing group of humans on the other side of the phone waiting to help you make this big change at your center. On top of our fabulous customer support that you will receive, we also have weekly podcasts on top of our webinars that are available. So if you didn't know that, I highly recommend you check those out. We also have an activity database. You can get activities for your classroom, for your homes, sent straight to your email on a weekly basis to help you out with that. We know it's really hard to find program planning time. We release articles by industry experts on a weekly basis. And as well, if you didn't know, we are a B certified company. So what that means is as we actively work with our amazing community of educators in the Hi Mama family, we're actively making a positive contribution in the early childhood education space. Okay, and your host, if this is your first time with us, if you've never met me before, my name is Maddie. I am your host of our Hi Mama Helps webinars. I'm also a customer advocacy specialist here at Hi Mama and one of the early childhood educators that we have here on our team. As always, I have my fabulous co-host with me, Lena. Lena, welcome. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with you today.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Nothing much really. I think it's sunny right now, but I know it's going to rain a little where I am. But I actually really like the rain. That's my fun fact for you all today.
I love that. I actually love a good storm as well. So I'm very excited for the rain that we are going to be getting, I think, tonight and all day tomorrow. Okay, and last but absolutely not least, our special guest today, Cindy, the director from the National Child Care Association. Cindy, welcome. Please feel free to go ahead and turn your camera on, turn that mic on. We are so excited to have you here with us today. Welcome, Cindy. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you, Maddie, and thank you, Lena. for assisting me today with getting on the webinar and being able to chat with, wow, over 350 people that are in the business and the profession of early childhood care and education. What an honor it is for me to speak to everyone today.
Well, Cindy, it's an honor to have you here with us. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now, Cindy. The stage is all yours. I don't want to take up any more of your time. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and click that share screen button.
Okay. Are we there yet?
We are there. You're good. Let me know if you need any help, Cindy. I'm here, but stage is all yours.
Okay, so I do need to move my screen, and for some reason it's not wanting me to do that.
In terms of clicking the arrow buttons there, Cindy, why don't you try clicking on the presentation? See if that helps. Maybe you could be clicked onto something else.
We might have to go with you moving my slide. There we go.
There we go. So I think we just need to advance a few slides here just to get to the very start, and then we'll be good.
Okay. Thank you all for your patience.
There.
All right. Well, I like to, let everyone know before we get started that I actually have been an early childhood care and professional for over 40 years. I spent 36 years working in childcare for one of the largest childcare providers in the United States in 13 different states. I also spent a couple of years in a before and after school program. And I have been the director of the National Child Care Association since 2019. So I would like to just share with you some of the things that I've learned along the way about being an advocate and the importance of it, and in hopes that those of you that are advocating will add to your library of knowledge about how to be one and why we have to stay committed. And for those of you that have yet to start. So, for lack of a better way to say it, this is all about the how and why to becoming an effective advocate for early care and education. And our takeaways today will include, first of all, the state of childcare before, during, and beyond COVID. One of the things that we have to understand is in order to be an advocate, you have to know what you're advocating for. And I've learned in talking with legislators and governors and individuals that can help move something along for early care and education, that you have to be specific about what it is you need and what it is you want. And to understand that, we really need to know what are the things that keep us from doing our best work for families and our ability to thrive so that we can do that. We're going to define what is an advocate and why you as an early care and education professional need to advocate, why the people in charge of making decisions for us need to hear directly from the people who do this every day in the field. And then I will try to narrow down very quickly and specifically the important aspects of advocacy. We call them the 3 C's of advocacy, and how to get prepared to advocate. And most importantly, how to be an effective advocate. And then I would like to just give you a brief overview of the current federal legislative landscape in the United States, because that's where I live and do business. And hopefully it will also help our Canadian friends in some way, so that we have the ability to know what it is that we need to be asking for right now based on where we are. All right, so let's just go to our next slide. Oops, went backwards, sorry. I'm hoping those of you that are out there that maybe aren't as tech savvy as some understand my predicament. And I would like to encourage you to definitely put questions in the chat and comments in the chat that you think are relative to your situation in this discussion, because we really need to understand how everybody out in the profession is feeling right now, and are they dealing with some of the things that the individuals I speak to all the time are. So first of all, let's look at childcare before COVID. Well, before COVID, 51% of all children ages 0 to 6 lived in a childcare desert, meaning there were more children that needed care than there were actually spaces available for in the community they lived in. This is predominantly rural areas. However, it is not exclusive to rural areas. So there was an access problem. There were approximately 4 million childcare settings in the United States before COVID, about 129,000 being licensed care centers and about 115,000 regulated or licensed family childcare homes. That's only 6%. That means that the 94% of childcare providers are not licensed or regulated in any way, shape, or form. So the majority of children are in care situations and typically care situations, not early education situations. And some of that has to do with affordability and accessibility. Only 1 in 7 children that qualified for childcare assistance under the Child Care Development Block Grant actually had access to it. It's underfunded and has been for years. Approximately 25 million school-age children did not have access to quality before and after care due to availability and affordability. Licensed childcare centers were operating on razor-thin margins due to the high cost of operating a high-quality program. And last but far from least, hiring and retaining credentialed and degree teachers required to meet many states' quality rating and improvement scales was becoming a challenge. And then we fast forward and we go to childcare during COVID. Well, the childcare industry, as all of you know, was brought to the brink of collapse. Some people did not even make it through. Congress realized that childcare was fragile and essential. And I'm still thinking that a lot of people are starting to think we're essential, but they're not completely there yet. Thus, we've got to be advocates to help them see that. Child care centers lost nearly 70% of their enrollment at the beginning of COVID, and they lost about 1/3 of their workforce. Congress realized that childcare was fragile. So 3 stimulus bills were passed between March 2020 and April 2021, providing a historical amount of money to save our childcare infrastructure. $52.5 billion. And keep in mind that during a very typical year, there was only a budget of about $5 to $6 billion given to childcare in the annual budget. So you can see what a great amount of money that was. And this money is still being used to help providers and families with their childcare expenses. Unfortunately, it runs out in 2023. And unless something changes in the annual budget for childcare, it will go back to being extremely underfunded. And I would just really like to emphasize that the advocates worked around the clock for the stimulus bills. And you can see that advocacy paid off. We did not sleep or rest. And some of you may have been a part of that in some shape or form, some way, shape, or form, I guess I should say. So beyond COVID, let's think about beyond COVID, because this is where we start to say, what are we going to advocate for? And first and foremost, childcare requires change to be more equitable. Currently, every state has their own definition of what high quality early care and education looks like. And let's just think about that. If you're in Kansas and you have your infant in a licensed childcare center, you're going to have one teacher for every three infants. However, if you're in Arkansas, which is not that far from Kansas, you're going to have one teacher for every 6 infants. So you can see that that's just one example of where the care and education of young children isn't equitable. It's not set up to be equitable. So then we move on to accessibility. And remember, I told you that only 51% of all children ages 0 to 6 do not have access to a licensed childcare center or a licensed family childcare home. And it is typically rural areas where the median incomes are not as high as they are for urban areas. And the cost of operating a high quality childcare center in those areas of the country are often more than families can pay. So therefore, it's not a business investment that people, potential childcare owners are even willing to make. And then of course, it needs to be more affordable. Childcare prices have become the highest annual expense for most households. The annual cost in 29 states and Washington, D.C. currently exceeds the annual cost of in-state tuition at a public 4-year university. It's just really hard to comprehend that, but we also know that it can't be, it's not the price that childcare providers are charging. It's the fact that the cost of providing high quality early care and education is very, very expensive. And last but not least, and as you can see, I put it in bold, fully staffed. Childcare requires change so we can be fully staffed with qualified early care and education professionals that are appreciated and paid for doing one of the most essential jobs in our country. If you happen to have a 4-year degree in early childhood education, you are the lowest paid profession of those that earn 4-year degrees. God bless you. So let's talk about what is an advocate. Advocacy involves promoting the interest or cause of someone or a group of people. An advocate is a person who argues for, recommends, or supports a cause or a policy. Advocacy is also about helping people find their voice. There are 3 types of advocacy: self-advocacy, individual advocacy, and systems advocacy. And what we're talking about here, our focus as childcare providers and educators, is on systems advocacy. Systems advocacy is about changing policies, laws, or rules that impact how people live their lives. And just as an example of how people live their lives and how we have an opportunity, but more importantly, a responsibility to help change this, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she has a daughter and her husband, and they have 2 young children. And they are middle income earners, not upper, not lower. And so they do not qualify for any kind of assistance. And their income is right at the median income of where they live in Florida, which is about $80,000 a year. Well, the cost of taking care of their infant and their toddler would take about $20,000 a year out of their income. And they really can't afford to do that because, they're not clearing 80,000. That's before taxes. So they work different shifts. They work, one works days and one works nights, and they provide the care, to their children themselves. And they're sleep deprived. They don't sit down and have dinner as a family. It just really plays havoc with the family structure and the ability to be a family. And it denies the children that opportunity to be in childcare and have the opportunity to learn the things they need to know before they go to school. So there's the other side of this. It's also talking about, how do we address the lives of our providers and our educators? We are expecting providers and educators in early childhood. Many of those educators receive government assistance because their wages are so low, and providers can't afford to pay them more in order to keep the doors open. So think about the lives that can be changed if we work to be an advocate in and participate in systems advocacy. So I want to make it really clear. This is so important. If you only remember one thing, because there's a lot going on in your world today. I know that. But who knows more than you do about early education and childcare? That's why you need to be an advocate. You absolutely, our legislators and the people in any kind of power that make decisions for us need to hear from us. But guess what? They don't usually knock on our door. We have to knock on their door. And we have to call or email them. We have to reach out. We have to show up. And that is really, really important. And I know it's hard to get out sometimes, but this has to be a priority, or we're going to continue to be in the hamster wheel and go round and round and round, and our world will not change. Our childcare infrastructure is broken, yet it is so essential that we have a responsibility to come together and speak in a unified voice so that we can seek and achieve the equitable, accessible, and affordable childcare and early education that is so desperately needed for families that are working. So I want to try to scale this down for you and make it possible for you to think about, how we do this so that's not so overwhelming, because it can be. I understand that it can be, but hopefully I'm giving you some ideas on these next few slides. We're going to talk about the 3 C's of advocacy and getting prepared and being an effective advocate. One of the things that's so important is in advocacy is to collaborate. This isn't a time to stay in your silo where sometimes we're more comfortable or, we struggle to, make the time or make it a priority to get out and meet other people of like minds. So we have to collaborate, connect, and communicate. And one of the first things that you can do is join a childcare association or some kind of organized group in your community, even the Chamber of Commerce at a federal, state, or local level. And typically you start out as an advocate locally or state. That's how I started. I actually joined a childcare association. I was a multi-site manager in the state of Oklahoma for a large childcare company. I had 8 schools, and I had a wonderful support system because I had a group of directors, I had co-district managers, I had a home office. And I didn't think I needed to join the Child Care Association because those were individuals that owned their own centers. Well, lo and behold, in the early 80s, mid 80s, the oil industry went under in Oklahoma, and we suddenly had a lot of unemployed people, and our businesses were struggling. And because I was in Oklahoma, anybody up north wasn't struggling, only those of us that lived in Oklahoma and Texas. And I had somebody that kept calling me and saying, you should come to our Child Care Association meeting. You should come to our Child Care Association meeting. So I decided to go. I thought maybe these people know something I don't know because I'm struggling here and nobody in my home office understands the struggle. And lo and behold, I met a lot of people that owned their own businesses and were providing care to children that were struggling with the same thing I was. But some of them had figured out ways to compensate for the lack of enrollment. And they were also reaching out to their legislators and their governor on what was needed to keep childcare alive and well through a huge recession. And that's my personal story. And I will tell you, that's how I ended up here, because the lady that drugged me in, and I'm using the word drug me in, to that organization also drugged me into the National Child Care Association about 20 years ago. And I became a board member. And then ultimately in 2019, there was some changes made in the National Child Care Association, and the parent company of NCCA NECPA became the parent company, and I was on that board, and I was retired, and they asked me to do this. So advocacy is a journey, and I really want to help you with your journey by suggesting to you ways you can start. You can also join committees or councils that represent the Office of Child Care in your state. I was able, through the Child Care Association, I was able to be a part of licensing revisions twice. I was asked to be a member of the Child Care Advisory Board that was underneath the governor of Oklahoma. There's all kinds of doors that opened for me to become an advocate just simply because I showed up at a Child Care Association meeting and then kept going back. So I would really emphasize you finding a group of like-minded people. Get familiar with your legislators in your district, your governors, your administrators of early childhood training programs in community colleges and higher ed. And I will tell you, I was eventually reaching out to the training programs in colleges and higher ed, because in order to achieve the quality rating improvement scale goals that the state of Oklahoma had for us, which included national accreditation, I needed to get people that were credentialed. And I also needed to get people that worked with me credentialed. And by reaching out, I eventually became a board member for Oklahoma State University for their director credential program and for the training program at Oklahoma University. So just showing up at a Child Care Association meeting started me on my journey. And I hope that story helps you see that that's where an advocacy journey starts. And don't get disillusioned. If you do decide to reach out to one of your legislators or your governors to make an appointment to talk with them, about and tell your story, because your story matters and what you do matters, you're going to talk to one of their aides, but that's okay, because those aides are there to hear what you have to say and to take materials and information, to the legislature or the governor. When you make these connections, be careful not to just complain. We need to be solution oriented. And that's sometimes, one of the problems that I have seen in working with different groups is you spend a really long time on the complaint and not enough time on the solution. And there are people that are more solution oriented than others. And that's where, if you have that unique talent, don't hesitate to use it, because it takes all kinds, to work together to get results. And tailor the communication to the agency or the leader that you're engaging. Try to find some common ground. I know I just met with a legislator from Virginia in Washington a few weeks ago, and I actually met with one of his aides. And the common ground is that his mother had owned a childcare center when he was young. And so again, you try to have some kind of, conversation that leads to, some type of familiar common ground that you might have with that individual. But more importantly, hold your head high. You are a stakeholder, a voter, an essential business person or organization, and your voice matters. But you have to use it, right? If you don't use that voice, it's not gonna matter. So I would encourage you, one, if you haven't started, start where you are and find an organization to work with and that you think can help move things along in the areas that early care and education need help from our government on. And if you are already a part of one of these associations, think about how you participate and what you bring to the table, and invite someone else, like someone invited me, because this is my invite to you, to all of you, is to become an advocate. And then, of course, we want to be prepared to be effective. How do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to ensure that the leaders at multiple levels understand the scope of the childcare crisis that has been building for years. And we really believe that our federal legislators are starting to get it. So that was demonstrated in the passing of the stimulus packages, the very generous ones. However, we're also realizing that it's not true at the state level. And there are still states that have not utilized their stimulus package money to fully benefit the childcare centers, while others have been very generous. New Mexico has done an outstanding job. Virginia's done an outstanding job. Florida, not so much. Oklahoma, not so much. I mean, I can go on. And if anybody would like to know more about that topic, you can email me and I will show you, I will give you the information about what your state has done or not done, and shared with you what other states have done, if that will help you in your advocacy. So you also need to ask for changes that will support very specifically equity, accessibility, and affordability for the families that you serve. Because in doing so, you will also be receiving help as a provider to make that happen. Share issues and possible solutions. I know that one of the stories I keep sharing is a provider I know that used to take care of 23 infants, had a huge demand for infants in her community. And when COVID hit, she lost most of her infants and infant teachers, even though she tried to retain them by paying them. But the infants, the parents either lost jobs or they were afraid to bring their infants, or the governor in her state also said you can only do 50% of your license capacity because we need to create, a bigger distance between the children and as they attend childcare. I mean, there were a lot of reasons that happened. Well, as we speak today, she has enough staff to take care of 8 infants. And she has been trying to restaff her infant classroom, which we all know takes a lot of people because of the child, to teacher ratio, for over a year. And we can't do it. We're not getting the qualified applicants. And sometimes we get them and then they take jobs somewhere else. She's raised pay. She's done a lot. That's an issue that we have to share. She also provides benefits, so Those stories matter when you're talking to especially your legislator, because you're a voter, you're his constituent. And he needs to hear, or she needs to hear, from a lot of their constituents in order to think that something's a problem. And then, of course, you have to require a robust plan that will allow you as a business owner to execute a sustainable, high quality early care and education program. Remember, your success as a provider and early educator keeps young children safe and learning while their parents work. And this is another point that's really critical in advocacy, is that our legislators typically, worry more about the economy and the ability for our economy to thrive. Well, if the childcare workforce is in crisis, and it is, then what we're going to have to, do is help them realize that, okay, let's think about this. We passed a huge infrastructure bill in last year to repair bridges and roads, and I call it the concrete infrastructure bill. But we can't pass a human infrastructure bill that would give support to childcare and give more accessibility to childcare for the parents that they're going to need to hire to build the bridges and fix the highways. So we have to help them understand that a viable workforce is critical. And that's something, it's critical to our economic livelihood here, both now and in our future. And that helps them pay a little more attention to what we are asking for or needing. And I hope that if some of you have questions, you're putting them in the chat. I should have reminded you because I'm anxious to, have some dialogue with you. But before we end, I just want to bring up what is on the table right now for childcare as far as additional funding. And some of you may or may not have been familiar with the Build Back Better bill that was proposed by the administration, President Joe Biden's administration, that would have infused $400 billion into childcare and early education. Well, that bill is definitely not going to go anywhere. It had a lot of resistance. And so a couple of senators, Senator Murray from Washington and Kane from Virginia, revamped a childcare and early learning reconciliation proposal. And it was introduced a couple of weeks ago on Capitol Hill. And at this point, the Senate is holding the purse strings here. And the Senate needs to, I don't want them to sleep. I want them to hear from so many of us to say, we need your help. And this is the kind of help that they're offering at this point in time. And certainly if there's something in this agenda that you would like to propose a different solution to, you can also do that as an advocate when you talk to your legislator's office aide or you email them, because this is just the solutions that have been pulled together and actually have, some help that could actually be available as soon as next year if this passes. First of all, it would add $72 billion over 6 years to the Child Care Development Block Grant, allowing CCDBG funding to be tripled in all states. 18 billion of the 72 billion would be dedicated to opening new child care centers in deserts and increase compensation to early educators. 18 billion of the 72 billion would be to invest in high quality preschool grants. 12 billion of the 72 billion would be available to raise Head Start teacher wages. And states would also have the opportunity to pilot an expansion of child care assistance to families of higher incomes meaning those that are above the poverty level, but more than likely, at the median income or below, and cap expenses at 7% of their annual income. So that's what's out there right now, as we speak, being talked about in the Senate. So if you want to just dive right into advocacy, make a call or send an email to your senator in your district as a constituent and support the bill. I encourage you to support it, but also if there's something you think would need to be changed, I encourage you to offer another solution. Don't just knock it down, offer another solution, because we do that at the NCCA as well. And last but not least, be committed to being an advocate for early care and education. People don't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than changing. And I have to think that it's pretty painful right now. It's painful to know that we can't, in many of our centers, enroll children of the parents that are calling because we don't have staff. And unfortunately, childcare has never had enough advocates or voices to get what has been needed to do the work for children and families that research in our experience has told us is needed for it to be equitable, accessible, and affordable. Silence ensures that history repeats itself. And if the majority of the individuals working in childcare, and there are millions working in childcare and early education, parents needing childcare and businesses needing employees remain silent, we are destined to get what we've always got. And in closing, I would just like for you to think about something that I often think about as a resident of the state of Oklahoma for 30 years and, learning about their Native American heritage and the struggles and the things that their culture, brings to the table as far as families and care of their families. And I don't even know which tribe to attribute this to, but I heard many years ago from a friend of mine that was a Native American, a Chickasaw. She said, and she also was the one who drugged me into the Child Care Association. Her name is Kathy Cromiller, and she passed away last year from COVID. So I do continue my work in her memory as well. But she used to say, what we do today affects the next 7 generations. And that comes from what she told me was an old Indian wisdom. So think about it. What you do today, what I do today, what we all do today will affect the next 7 generations. So let's do it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Cindy. That was absolutely fabulous. And I don't know about anyone else on here, but I was definitely shocked by some of the things that I learned from you today in terms of 94% of centers are not licensed childcare centers. That for those who get a 4-year degree, it's the lowest paid profession for those who get a 4-year degree. Definitely wowed me a lot with this presentation, Cindy. So thank you so much for everything you shared. We did have some questions come in that I'm excited to get to chat with you about. But first things first, if you don't mind, Cindy, I am going to just take over that screen share. So go ahead, feel free to stop sharing your screen, take a sip of water, take a break. And I'm going to go ahead and actually do our questions of the day to our audience. So as always, we have our questions of the day, which I'm going to go ahead and launch to everybody. So you should see those pop up in a second. And today we want to know, how do you feel about your current workplace environment? Do you feel supported? Do you feel like you're set up for success? Do you have the resources that set you up for success, or do you not? Do you have a community at your center that supports you, or is that not really existent at the current center you work for? And are you interested in learning about how Hi Mama can help staff avoid burnout and feel supported? in my role as a customer advocacy specialist, I get to chat with so many directors. And one thing I constantly hear is that by bringing Hi Mama into their center, being able to show the deep learning that is happening through our tag development feature, where you can attach the deep learning, a lot of educators are feeling a lot more recognized for their work, which does help to decrease the burnout at their center. And we can also support your educators in finding really great communities here at Hi Mama to network, chat, share ideas. So go ahead and let us know in the poll there if you are interested in learning about how Hi Mama can help your staff avoid burnout and feel supported, and for yourself as well. And last question there. Do you submit your Hi Mama's webinar certificates to your local licensing agency for professional development hours? Or when you get your certificates of participation from Hi Mama, do you just keep those for yourself in your own file? Curious to know what you do with those. I will leave those up there for you to fill out. And in the meantime, Cindy, if you're ready, we do have a couple questions for you that I'd love to chat with you about.
Okay.
Okay. So a few questions came in from the audience, which is lovely. And the first question I want to pose to you from someone on here today is, as a director, how can we get our staff and our team involved in more advocacy initiatives?
Well, I think if you found it helpful to hear some of the information that I just shared with you, that starts people thinking about how they can, actually affect a change, as a voter and as an early childhood educator. And I think providing with them information that makes it easy for them to do that. And one of the things that we do at the National Child Care Association is that we share newsletters that actually have what we call action alerts. And we outlined this bill in our last newsletter last week. And then we also typically include a way for you to make a quick connection with your legislator by typing in a zip code. We partner with Child Care Aware of America and First Focus and National Women's Law Center, who make those things available to us, and we can reuse them to share with our members. So they can go direct, that goes directly to their US legislator or senator. And then periodically we'll publish the phone numbers and email addresses of, every state's senator and, representatives for areas, because that information, it's got to be at your fingertips. And so if a senator is so inclined to joining the National Child Care Association, it's $100. And ultimately they will receive all of our information and therefore can, share it with their staff as well, so that they have that information. Because I think that's what will help people is, knowing more. Because what do they say? If we know better, we do better. And advocacy is just really something that's always been left up to, organizations, and it's not enough, because if it was enough, we'd have made a lot of strides years ago.
Absolutely. So just
great question, by the way. Thank you for that question.
Absolutely. So my main takeaway I'm getting from that, Cindy, is we need to make it as accessible to the educators in our center as possible, so it doesn't seem like this big daunting task. So even something as simple as sharing this webinar with them, sharing your newsletter with them, just getting the ball rolling with a small gesture could be a great first step.
Right.
Okay. And this is a little bit of an extension of that question, but I saw some engagement in the chat through your presentation about how what is really important on top of directors and educators advocating is how do we have the families at our center to have our backs and also be advocates for the field. And then I saw a lot of comments and a lot of praises, and I agree, and yes, yes, yes. So I kind of wanted to dive into that conversation with you a little bit. How do we get our parents involved? How do we get our parents to understand the value of advocacy and even go to their state legislators on their own?
That's interesting that you asked that question. And again, it's an excellent question. And one of the things years ago in working with the Oklahoma Child Care Association, which is where I began my advocacy efforts, the person, Kathy, my advocacy mentor, we used to take parents to some of the commission meetings where things were being decided by our Department of Human Services, which oversaw childcare and rates, and let them give testimony and tell their story about how difficult it was to have a co-payment raised if they were working and, trying to take care of children. And there were times where, again, when it was going to cost parents more, or when we were being asked to, raise our quality, we also would go to licensing and sit down and say, we're not resistant to this. We would like, to have regulation that is meaningful to high quality care, but we need your help in talking to, the legislators, the governor, the commission that determined how much childcare would receive if they were taking care of a funded child. Because if you just resist childcare licensing regulation, they don't know. I mean, we produced our financial statements. We did a lot to help them understand that. And then the other thing we learned to do was sometimes parents would be mad at the provider about something that we had to do. And a lot of times it's centered around money. You can't mess with people's money. And we learned to say, you know what, we agree with you. And can I offer you, the person that, that you need to talk to? And I would look up their senator, what zip code do you live in? If we know that if you live in this area, this is your senator, this is your state legislator, or here's the governor's phone number, because we don't make these decisions about whether if you're on a subsidized care plan. Or we used to have customers that weren't part of subsidized care that felt like we had raised our prices to compensate for what subsidized care wasn't paying us. So again, I never have refrained from helping people understand how the system works.
Absolutely. So we have to help bring a little bit more awareness to some of our families. They might not even know that there are all these things worth advocating for in the field right. when they bring their children every day. Absolutely.
We all want them to be able to afford childcare.
Absolutely.
We all want the children to have a quality teacher. But when you think about all of the funding that school districts get to pay their four-year degrees better, even though that's a whole nother debacle because they're not paid enough either. But what's happening is because public school teachers are starting to realize they can make more money outside of, teaching and a living wage, we're losing our credentialed teachers to teacher assistant positions, and we're losing our four-year degrees to public school systems. So, because again, they have retirement. They work 190 days a year typically, and they don't have to serve lunch and clean tables, childcare is 10 hours a day for most children, 11 for some.
Yeah, absolutely. And my very last question for you before we do run out of time here, Cindy, but we had another guest ask a question. They're curious, besides our state and national legislators, is there anyone else you recommend that they can also reach out to or contact as they start to engage in these advocacy efforts?
Well, definitely business leaders that need employees are really open to a relationship with childcare. I would say that, partnering with chambers of commerce or local chambers of commerce or state chambers is more important than ever, because if they hear directly from the childcare providers, within the area that they do business, they may be willing to help join in the advocacy to make it possible for centers to, enroll children again. And that, I will tell you, the biggest barrier is the money that, and the benefits that, and the respect that childcare and early education professionals do not have. So they're going to play a part. I understand from working with a group called Tudris, which is one of our business partners, that they have been working with at the national level with the Chamber of Commerce, and that they have been working at the federal level with legislators because they are desperate for employees. We all know that the workforce, even outside of childcare, is hurting. And so those connections are very, very important.
Absolutely. Well, Cindy, I can't thank you enough for sharing all these deep insights and learnings with us. As an educator myself, I can say I definitely struggled finding my footing and taking that first step towards advocacy. And I know this webinar was appreciated by so many. I hope you've been able to see the chat a little bit to see all the praise and the thank yous for being here and taking the time to share your knowledge with us, Cindy. It is so appreciated. That is all the time we have today for the presentation. We are going to start our wrap up, but Cindy, I really appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thanks to all of the people that joined us today, because I know they're incredibly busy with their job of taking care of children. So thank you for being essential.
Absolutely. I echo those words 100%. Thank you, Cindy.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Hi Mama, for asking me to talk today.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Cindy. Before we do wrap up, everybody, one final reminder, keep an eye out for that show notes email. Cindy gave us so many valuable tips today, so we will be sending out the recording. Keep an eye out for that so you can go through and get some of these tips again. And in that email, we will also be announcing the winner of the $50 gift card giveaway. So keep an eye out for that. And again, if you are the winner, we will also contact you directly so you don't have to worry about that. And again, show notes, recording, your certificate, we're sending that all out to you by early next week. So do not worry if you don't see it today or even tomorrow. I promise we're working on getting all of that out to you by early next week. And next week, same time, same place, next Thursday, already June. I can't believe it. Thursday, June 2nd at 2:00 Eastern time, we are sitting down with Barefoot Books to talk about creating an anti-bias classroom for children through picture books. And they are also giving away a picture book prize pack for your classroom or for your center. So you definitely want to be here for that. You can sign up now. Lena will post a link in the chat. And lastly, if you are not connected with us yet, please do follow us on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. It's a Circle Time group for early childhood educators. And very topical for today, we have a lot of educators in there sharing their stories, sharing what's going on, and sharing a lot of really great activities for their classroom. It's an amazing network of educators. So I highly recommend you join our Circle Time Facebook group if you haven't already. And lastly, it's 3:00 on the dot. I will let you all get back on with your days, but thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today and learning more about how you can take that first step towards advocacy in early childhood education. Thank you so much all. Take care.